Hey you guys, this is the video that goes for the Q&A column on smoke and mist and fog. So again, you can see that I've already got the main painting already started. And I'm going to be putting in fog in two different places. It's more kind of like a vapor, like a general city vapor. But I'm going to be putting it in front of the foreground, and then also behind the front building, in front of the buildings in the back. And I'm starting with the front. So you can see right now I'm using a soft but still a little bit harsh brush for putting in the initial plumes. If you look at photos of smoke especially, the edges have these little tendrils, and they tend to be actually a little bit rough. They have quite a few kind of hard edges in them, so you don't want to just make really soft smoke everywhere. It won't look right. At least if you're going for a thicker, denser smoke like this. If you're doing mist, it doesn't. You can make it as soft as you want because there are no edges in mist for the most part. So here you can see I'm still trying to build up the forms, and I've got the opacity turned down to 30%. And since I know that I can control the opacity via the layers as well, don't worry too much about getting too opaque with it. Because even if it seems like it's too thick, you can always just turn the whole layer down. Actually, just this zoomed out version right here kind of gives you an idea of what it would look like if it was all just too soft. Alright, so now I've got a second layer going, and I'm just going to keep building up on top of it. And generally when I'm doing several layers for any kind of layer of smoke, the higher layers get the harder edges and the lower layers have softer edges. And don't be afraid to go crazy with the smudge tool, as long as you've got something that has... you can use a soft edge if you're trying to get rid of too many hard edges, but when going through the whole thing, I would suggest using at least like a kind of dirty brush that has some sort of a texture that it's going to give to the edges, or else, again, it's going to feel too soft. And one of the cool things about fog like this is, as far as how you design the actual shape of it, it really just is whatever looks best in your picture. The wind could be doing anything. As far as these are concerned, I would imagine these are coming from some kind of either like a smokestack or the vents on top of buildings or something like that. And since You can put them wherever outside the frame. Really, just design the smoke however looks best. It's hard to do it wrong unless you can't feel that upward motion. That's the only thing I would try to focus on, is make sure it feels like it's naturally floating upwards. I would also suggest, because you can see I'm kind of doing this with the third layer, keep it more dense towards the bottom, and as it moves up towards the sky, it'll usually become more translucent. Here you can just see I used the Gaussian blur to kind of soften the whole thing, because it was feeling, even though, again, you don't want it to be too soft, if the edges are so hard that it feels like it's not smoke, like you could touch it, a lot of times I will duplicate the layer and then put a Gaussian blur on it and then play with the opacity on both of those layers so that I have a soft and a hard version, and I'm kind of shifting back and forth between the two to see what feels like a good ratio. Alright, so I got the front done. So yeah, I like to just group the layer, keep it organized. And now I'm going to put in more fog, but something a bit more dense behind the building to give you an idea of how you would do that. Also, just in general, if you're going to have, fog on one side of a person, it usually helps if it's behind them as well. Kind of glues everything together.